This case has finally come to a close as the Bonhomme Richard went up in flames only a little over a year ago, and what we're looking at is finally this man, this young sailor, service member, has cleared his name, as it was known that there was no evidence against him as far as any physical evidence that this sailor was near where the fire started. And it is also known that people said this was a witch hunt, that there was an admiral that still decided to press charges against him. But today we have an acquittal, as it has been decided by a military judge. Updated, the former Bonhomme Richard sailor Ryan Sawyer Mays acquitted of arson. It says, Naval Base, San Diego, California, a military judge today acquitted a young sailor accused by the Navy of setting a 2020 fire ultimately destroyed an amphibious warship as it neared completion of a major modernization and overhaul. Captain Derek Butler's findings not guilty of arson and of hazarding a vessel puts an end to a 2-year ordeal of seaman recruit Ryan Sawyer Mays as a 19-year-old deck seaman. He was, not that word, alleged by his shipmate who claimed he saw Mays near where the fire began in the former USS Bonhomme Richard's lower vehicle deck. Should be noted as well that there were batteries that were improperly stored in this area that could have been an attributing factor to how this fire started. So on top of that, the other shipmate that said that he was there also had several accounts of what uniform he was wearing and specific details of what happened. Now, that appears to actually go against, what the prosecution was going for, but here we are. At the hearing, the verdict given briefly by the judge, there was a loud collective gasp in the courtroom, and Mays, standing between his attorneys, dropped to his chair and sobbed loudly. After a minute or so crying, red-faced, Mays hustled to the galley and tightly hugged his wife. His father came to him and tightly held him. In quotations, "I never had a doubt," he told Mays. "I love you," his mother said. This kid has suffered the accusations by the U.S. military. He's also, from what appears from this, lost rank down to the level of E1. On top of that, he is also dealing with, he will never have to, put his name in Google and not see this again. This will be out there forever. He says, "I'm so grateful that this is finally over. It's been a long 2 years," Mays said outside the court building, flanked by his wife, parents, and defense team. "I've been waiting a long time. The past 2 years," he said, "have been the hardest of my entire life as a young man. I've lost time with friends. I've lost friends," he said. "I've lost time with family, and my entire Navy career was ruined. I'm looking forward to starting over. I'm thankful for the judge that heard the evidence and cleared my name," he added. "And thank you to those of the media who try to tell my team's story. You don't understand how grateful I truly am." And that is why I sit here in front of you today. Because as much as I cover this from the very first video, you're going to see all these news outlets out there that are not going to cover this story. The ones that were capitalizing on it as the Bonhomme Richard topic was hot. As they were capitalizing as it's good to see that someone was going to hold accountability for a multi-million-dollar warship, could have just been this measly, disgruntled sailor that is just mad that he didn't make it through SEAL training. But that's not the full story here, and that's why I'm covering this. A member defense team called on the Navy to accept responsibility for the fire, said Gary Barthrow, a retired Marine Corps attorney and defense consultant in the case. The ship's lower vehicle deck was a quotation junkyard. Sailors testified in that the quotations the Navy was attempting to clean up its mess by accusing Seaman Mays. If history is any less than the Navy has in the past had a hard time acknowledging responsibility for something, I do not anticipate that the Navy will come back and make the conclusion that this was an undetermined cause of the fire. I think the Navy will hang on to the belief that this was an arson, but the fact is that Seaman Mays has been found not guilty." And I have to question this because the admiral that held these accusations against Seaman Mays here and said, "I understand," and he was advised that there was no physical evidence that Mays was there. Factually, there was nothing physically. However, there were facts of dereliction of duties that were held by higher leadership, which included the commanding officer, executive officer, and command master chief, that there were certain things such as basic firefighting and damage control to save that ship that were not actually competent and were just being signed off. Per some of the reports that we've seen out here, those people were fired. Are they on the chopping block like Seaman Mays is? Are they being held to the same level of accountability? No, we don't see that. This is what people have been asking for over the past couple years and what I've covered on this channel. Is accountability, and are we going to see that? Mays, quotations, feels like he has been a victim throughout the process, said Barthel, who presented the sailor at his preliminary hearing on December 2021. For 2 years, as an investigation and prosecution continued to portray him as an arsonist, despite Mays' insistence he was innocent. That quotations has tainted his motivation and desire to stay in the Navy. It is unclear how much longer Mays, who enlisted in 2019, will remain in the Navy. He had been assigned to Amphibious Squadron 5 in San Diego while his legal case continued. And quotations, the Navy is committed to upholding the principles of due process and a fair trial, a 3rd Fleet spokesman, Lieutenant Samuel Boyle, said in a statement. I don't blame Mays one bit for wanting to get out of the military and call it quits. I would have lost all faith and trust in equality and fair treatment for all, as it says in the Sailor's Creed out there, and what the military tries to stand by. Obviously, they were standing by their honor, courage, commitment by committing to try and get this guy behind bars and make sure he was the scapegoat for this entire thing. But it looks like the day in court has finally spoken. There's much more to this case. Defense attorneys had argued that there was more than enough reasonable doubt in the Navy's prosecution to find him not guilty of the charges. They said he consistently pressed his innocence and questioned whether it was arson that started the blaze or just an accidental fire sparked by faulty vehicles or lithium-ion batteries. Like I said, they were stored in the area, which sailors and contractors working on the ship had used as a junkyard. Navy criminal investigators accused Mays of starting the fire because he was angry at dropping from the training course of being a SEAL, like I said. During court sessions, prosecutors described him as a disgruntled and unhappy about his assignment to the ship stuck at the pier for maintenance. And what you'll see is a lot of people after this were talking about some of these contractors that were in these areas that are not the most reliable. Some of them have sketchy backgrounds, and there were a lot of people questioning their character. But a lot of people were focusing on May's character, and that's all they could base this case off was circumstantial evidence and his character, and they tried to destroy him on that. So Seaman Mays' life has been put on hold. Lieutenant Commander Jordi Torres, the lead defense attorney, argued on Tuesday morning during closing statements. The sailor who claimed to have seen Mays in the lower V's is the only evidence the government has, if there's even an arsonist to begin with, which they were questioning. There was no open flame that they recovered, Torres said, adding that apparently having a lighter makes you an arsonist. Investigators found a small lighter during a search of May's personal belongings. Now, this is not too out of the ordinary. Sailors obviously are going to partake in using a lighter for maybe some kind of tobacco products, and it has also been known that you can't have vapes on board naval ships, so it would be normal for somebody to do some kind of, smoking type tobacco type thing versus having a vape. And so either way, they were going to use anything they could against him. There has never been a myopic focus on Seaman Mays, Jones said. He defended the investigation and prosecution, adding that, quotations, we've proven it beyond a reasonable doubt. In 2020, Mays was held for 3 months in pretrial confinement in San Diego Brig, but was released without being charged. Then in July 2021, the Navy formally charged him, but did not order his confinement as the case wound through preliminary hearing and then went to trial. Can we appreciate that he did 3 months of confinement for a thing he was never even charged of? Was he a flight risk? Was he a runaway risk? Did they really think this kid was going to just go by in the middle of the night? We are seeing this tactic be done over and over and over again. You look at this kid going through it. You looked at Stuart Scheller going through it. You looked at Eddie Gallagher going through it. And all of them were put behind bars for what were questionable circumstances. And I have to ask why, and we don't get those answers here. Defense attorneys grilled investigators and government experts in fire forensics and engineering over their conclusions and argued the investigation failed to present any specific, strong physical and forensic evidence that Mays was in the deck at the time that it had set fire. By the way, they tried to even include his Instagram, which said something about napalm in regards to a film line that was not even from his own words, but that were trying to make it seem like he was a pyromaniac. It says investigators, Torres said, did not pursue possible links to two other recent fires, a burned mattress aboard amphibious assault berth at Pier 8 the afternoon the fire broke out aboard Bonhomme Richard, and a few weeks earlier a small fire aboard the BHR in a cup in engineering space. They say we really don't know what happened there entirely, Torres argued, because NCIS didn't investigate it. Investigators questioned Mays for nearly 10 hours one day in early August 2020 before he was confined at the brig. At one point in the investigation, he began to cry, "I didn't do anything, let me go." He said in a video clip played in court Thursday morning during Torres' closing statements. And he said, quotations, "This is not a close call," the attorney told the judge. In quotations, "The evidence did not support a conviction, not by a long shot. Seaman Mays is innocent." I just want to say I am glad that we are now at the finale of this case and that Mays can sleep well tonight and rest his head down for once and actually be a free man, because he wasn't free for the 3 months he was in confinement. He wasn't free as he was busted down and made to work over another place, still in the military, with doubt lingering over his head from an admiral, which I would assume that might have lingered down as well, and the judgments and the friends he's lost and the time that he will never get back. I don't know if he has any legal recourse to get something back from the military after he becomes a civilian, but I will say to Seaman Recruit Mays, if you want to come on the channel and talk eventually, I've covered your story. I have a whole playlist. If you guys have not seen it, please go watch it, because it tells this story from front to back, and I think that's important here. But if you guys like what I cover here, let me know what you guys think about the situation. What do you think about the idea that he was being sought as the main scapegoat of this, and now that we have a final verdict from this judge? Let me know down in the comments below. If you guys like what I do, you can always hit me up on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, or down in the comments below if you guys have other video ideas. As always, I love you guys. I'll see you next time.